Good morning.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. We're going to start our meeting this morning, operation meeting. It is March 19th, 2019, at 10:10. I'll say 10:10. Okay, and the first to come up is our FY20 budget development update.
Right.
So could you start off by just giving us your name and the
Good morning, John Walker, CFO.
Good morning, Courtney Desabay, Special Assistant to the CFO. All right. Sorry, forgot I had the clicker. All right, so the first thing we have on the presentation is just an updated timeline, development timeline, as of where we are right now. So we are beginning the reconciliation process. We still do have a few schools going through the approval queue, so that's delayed the reconciliation process by a couple days. But we hope to start reconciliation by tomorrow. If we do, the rest of the timeline should remain intact as it's listed on the slide right here. Most recently, we just completed the budget collaboratives. So on this slide, we have the results of the collaboratives. So of the schools who were invited, and we invited every single school in the district, we had pretty close to perfect attendance. We had 5 charters who did not attend and 1 traditional school, and that one was due to extenuating circumstances. That was Douglas. Yes.
Okay, don't go too fast because I'm trying to follow you.
Sure.
And this list here is over a period of time?
Yes, so we had the collaboratives from February 15th to March 1st. There were a couple scheduling issues between that period. We had some snow days. We had President's Day. So we did end up having 3 or 4 collaboratives on the following Monday, just as makeup sessions. But other than that, we had, like I said, pretty good attendance for the rest of the schools. The departments who were present for support were Family and Community Engagement, Title I, Human Capital, the budget team, Special Education, Instructional Leadership EDs, the ILEDs, Office of Teaching and Learning, College and Career Readiness, and the school support managers. So as we discussed before, the principals sit at the table with their ILEDs and the support from the different offices in building their budgets and entering the budget information on site. And some of the same individuals are the ones who go through the process of approving those budgets in the approval queues as well.
And how many schools, I didn't see you include the amount of schools, how many schools was involved in this?
We invited every school, so 171 schools.
I know you invited all the schools, but how many schools did attend this? Do you know?
Yeah, so what we have here, the attendance, so of the P-TECH. Okay, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No, I think the question that I was really trying to ask, how many locations did you use?
We did them all
That's
here.
really what I
Yeah,
wanted
we did them all here in central office in room 301.
All in one place?
Yes, so
Okay.
at one point, we had, anywhere from 3 to 5 sessions going on at the same time. We split up the room into different groups.
Oh, okay.
So we
Breakout
had
rooms.
teams working at the same time in their
Okay.
room on the budgets, yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. That's
Yeah,
what
over
I
the period
really
of 2
want to
weeks.
know.
Yeah, so pretty much the staff were locked in the room from 8:30 to 5 p.m. every day for a 2-week period.
Oh, okay.
So it was really an intensive effort by the various offices who were supporting, and the principals as well, who had to come with their budgets prepared and ready to go. And
Was
ready to
it held
explain.
in the evenings so the principals could come?
It was all day. So we had them scheduled from 8:30 in the morning to 5 p.m. They were each 90-minute slots.
Okay,
So for each principal, they'd have to come for 90 minutes, and then they could return to the day.
okay, so they had to leave their school to come?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
The next slide is detailing some of the cabinet budgeting workshops. So cabinet spent a month. A lot of these sessions were 2-day sessions, which were 2- and 3-hour meetings, which were pretty intensive as well. There was a lot of deliberation between cabinet members in terms of their individual budgets and priorities. And a lot of this was figuring out ways to balance the budget, but also to incorporate a lot of the priority items that we had discussed before into building the budgets for fiscal year 20. So we're in the closing phase of that right now, which is incorporating and entering those budgets into the central office budgeting tool. The next thing we've included in the presentation is a little more detail now that we've finished the school portion on the allocations, the Fair Student Funding allocations. So what this is essentially like a preliminary comparison for the weight allocations, specifically, the new weights. So as you know, we did the new funding model in fiscal year 19, and again this year in fiscal year 20. So in here, we did some data comparisons between how the funding was allocated for the new weights in the new model versus the weights in the old model as well. And I'm going to talk through some of that data. So the only schools included here are the Fair Student Funding schools, so the schools that receive Fair Student Funding dollars. So that means it excludes charter schools, it excludes alternative option programs, and it excludes the separate public day schools, the special ed schools. So the first slide shows the dollars per pupil by the different weight types. What's excluded here is the foundation and baseline services, and I'll explain what those are. Foundation in the old model was the money essentially given to small schools, and it was based specifically just on school size. So schools smaller than like 250 or so students received a portion of funding based on how far below that cutoff they are. And the total, the max funding goes up to the amount for 2 full-time teachers. So no school essentially got more than about $198,000, regardless of how far below they fell. And it only accounted for enrollment. In the new funding model, which is used in 19 and 20, the baseline services model, which was helped to be developed by ERS, it takes into account school size, but it takes into account a lot of other factors as well, like the ratios for the classes, having administrative staff and secretaries, et cetera. So it develops essentially a mock funding model for each school as to, based on their enrollment, what they should have. And then it looks at the dollars that they receive in comparison to that, and any dollar that they fall short of that target, they're given that as an allocation to be brought up to that minimum baseline amount. So essentially, it's not saying how the school should spend the money, but it's ensuring that they should have at least a minimum amount of dollars to do what the basic needs are for the school. So those two things are not shown on this chart because they're not allocated on a per pupil basis. Those are school allocations, not per pupil allocations. But what we do have listed here in the old model in fiscal year 18 on the left, the dropout prevention weights, the advanced and basic weights, which were based on the old MSA exam, and the base weight. The base weight is the base amount that you get for every Fair Student Funding student. On the right side, in the new model, we have a concentration of poverty weights, high academic performance weight. You have poverty both for high school and non-high school, which are, as you can see, are different per pupil amounts. And you have a high school grade weight, which is just for high schools, and the base weight, of course. The poverty weights use the direct certification information, as well as we use some entry-level WIDA information, which is English language learner information, to capture some of the students that are not being captured in the direct certification. It's one of the proxies that we use to try and account for some of that student population. The next slide right here is demonstrating the percentage of the schools receiving these specific weights. So under the old model, essentially you had 18% of schools who would receive the foundation weight, what we call the small school supplement. 20% of schools receiving dropout prevention. Just about all the schools receive advanced and basic. The only reason that number is not 100%, we have a pre-KK Lakewood, which did not receive those weights because of the grade configuration for that school. On the right side, you see for the fiscal year 19 and 20 in the new funding model, you had 21%, which matches, the number of high schools, received a high school grade, 31% receiving the baseline. So what you can see is that you have more schools being affected by the baseline services weight than what you had in the old small school supplement. And as you'll see on the next slide, it's affecting more students as well, and to a larger dollar amount. The high academic performance and poverty, which affects almost all our schools. Again, the schools being excluded from poverty, why it's not 100%, or Lakewood, the pre-K to K, and in 19 and 20, we had the PTEC schools as separate cost centers as well, and they're treated a little bit differently. So that's why it's not 100%. Otherwise, all of our schools have some level of students in poverty. So the next slide breaks down similar information except by percentage of students, not just schools. So again, here you can see there's a larger reach for the baseline services than what we had for the foundation amount. And you can see, again, poverty being the highest distributed weight for students based and it's very similar to our direct certification percentage for poverty as well. This third slide has the allocation of those weights in the two models by the dollars. So in the old version of the funding model, the highest dollar allocations were for the basic weight. And to be clear, this is the MSA basic weight, not the base weight that every student gets. This is just the basic weight on top of that. Versus in the new model where you see our highest allocations, matching our discussion, our priority are for poverty as well. And there's also a large contribution to the high school grade weights. We knew in the development of the model that a lot of funding for poverty would be going towards the elementary schools and going away from high schools. So there was a weight added because of the additional costs for running a high school, which is the high school weight on this end. Any questions on any of these? Okay. All right. Well, the last section is really just where we're going to next in terms of the budget development process. So as I mentioned, right now we're going into the reconciliation process, and what that is essentially taking the data from all three budget tools, the grants tool, the central office tool, and the schools tool, matching the data up against each other, and then starting to organize the position data, making sure there are no duplicates in the information, all the funding is correct. Everything that's listed in the budget tools matches the proposed org charts for the central office and the plans for the schools. So the central offices go through the process of approving the different phases of the budgets for the schools, making sure their FC information is accurate, their special ed information is accurate, and all the rest of that. And then we go through the process of taking that raw data and really converting it into what's going to become the budget for July 1st. So it's a pretty intensive process. There's a lot of data analysis, data checking, and so forth. And while we're doing that, we're going to be working on building the preliminary budget book and budget information to be presented to the board as well. So that's the part of the process where we are over the next couple weeks. All right. Any questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And next, 21st Century School Budget Program quarterly update, please.
Good morning, Commissioners and Chief of Schools and Christian. Sherry Vincent here, no longer the Interim Executive Director. I am accompanied this morning by the Permanent Executive Director, Dorothy Hellman, to my right. This is Commissioner Bondima and Commissioner Richardson.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
So
Thank you.
I'm not throwing her in at the deep end, so I'm actually not going to make her present, but she will be the next time.
Good morning. Welcome to Baltimore City
Thank
Public
you so
School
very
System.
much.
Thank you.
I was a prior resident of Charm City, so. very
Oh.
familiar. Yes.
Oh, then we are really lucky. Thank you so much.
It's good to be home.
Good.
So a brief quarterly update for you this morning. Let's see, I get to do this, don't I? Yes. There we go. We'll touch on the year one and year two schools progress, our local hiring status, 21st century learning, their academic focus areas that have been defined at this point, communications and public relations, what they're into at the moment, and then the selection of our permanent executive director, whom I've already introduced. So in this first slide, the year one progress, you'll see that all of the schools in year one have now opened with the exception of two. At the bottom, Arlington, which will open in the fall in September, and Patterson Claremont, which in fact now will be at the end of the program in September of 2021. As you recall, Patterson was on hold for over a year, but will be breaking ground this summer in June. Arlington broke ground in June of 18, and of course, will be delivering in the fall.
Sherry, can you
Yes.
remind me again, where are the students at Patterson going in the fall?
They will be remaining in their current location because that school will be built next to the existing school. So they will swing in place much as Arundel did. All the other schools have had to swing off-site because of the proximities, or in fact, sometimes we were going to build in the same footprint. So, but in the case of Patterson, they will remain where they are. In the Year 2 status, in the fall, Fairmount Harford, which is the REACH program, will open, as well as Arlington, as I mentioned, from the Year 1 schools. And then during the winter, we will open John Rura, Baybrook, and Calvin Rodwell. And then, as you see, going on from there, we go down to the fall of September 2020 with the next 2 schools. Commodore John Rogers and Highlandtown are listed as January of 2021, but with asterisks, and that indicates that their dates could in fact change. Right now, we're re-looking at them. They're for constructability, and so those are addition only. The only 2 in the program that are that, and so those may in fact not, they may shift in their delivery dates. And then the remaining Year 2 schools, Govans, Medfield, Walter P. Carter, Cross Country, Montebello, and Robert Coleman, all in 2021. And then in 2022, also Calverton and James Mosher. I apologize, Northwood should have dropped all the way to the bottom. Calverton and James Mosher, as you will recall, are the grade band reconfiguration schools, so they must open at the same time. James Mosher will be a PK to 2, and then Calverton, which is right nearby, will be a 3 to 8 school. And then Northwood would be January of 2022, and that is a complete replacement school.
Could you just tell me again, concept design, what do you mean by that?
Concept design is the first level of the final design process. They go through concept, then they go to schematic design, and then design development, or DDs they're called, and then final CDs are the construction documents that they actually build from. So it progresses through all of those stages, and they sort of indicate a level of completeness and detail that increases over time.
So, I have a question about
Yes.
the Inspire portion of this. Is that in place for these schools right now?
So Inspire has I apologize, I can't off the top of my head give you their schedule, but I know that in the last time I spoke with Jennifer Leonard about where they are in the scheme of things, they are actually progressing on to the schools that we have in progress right now that are under construction, so that they can be ready roughly at the same time, have their work completed at the same time that we do in preparation for opening. And it varies, of course. You know that the particular program that they develop for each school is unique to that school. So some need more work in terms of access, sidewalks and street trees, that sort of thing. Others, for example, we've been talking about an additional playground at Mary E. Rodman, for example. And so they're looking at whether or not some of their dollars perhaps could go into this additional playground and making it more robust for the community. So again, it's just really on a per school basis. So we are working to get back into a better routine with them in terms of walking the sites during the construction process, so that we can really make sure that we're integrating, our respective programs and not overlapping.
I was a part of some of the conversations
Yes.
earlier on. I'd like to
Yes.
resume those.
Yes, I think
So-
the last meeting was canceled
It had to be canceled,
Yes, and so
yes.
we need to get that back on the books for you so that you
Absolutely.
can help us in that regard. We'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right. Let's see, and then going on to local hiring, so I've broken it out into 3 categories. You have completed schools, pending schools, and then the next slide will show you active schools. So under the completed schools, that means that MSA has had time to completely vet the numbers. So the official local hire numbers are listed there. You'll see the 52, the 70 for Fort Worthington, 66 for Wildwood, and so on. And the next grouping, the unofficial local new hires, are numbers that Right now, they have, but have not completely scrubbed. And by that, I mean they have to actually go through and verify that they were residents of Baltimore City, not the county or any place else, and that they did work the requisite hours. So they really comb through the payroll records and everything. And then when they're satisfied that the information is accurate, they become official local hires. And then in the next slide, the active schools are the ones that are under construction now. So those numbers we expect to increase by the time the projects are actually completed. And then at the bottom, you see a little summary there of the total new hires, the total unofficial local new hires, and then the total unofficial local new hires for active schools, and they are about 1,000 total. So we're really, I think, doing very well. There's quite a lot of effort that's placed into making sure that we get as many local hires as possible. Academic focus areas you can study at your leisure, but these are now the ones that have been confirmed. And so the list is primarily it is all of our open schools at this point in time. And remember that there are the two programs in Robert Poole, so you have ACE and Independence. So it totals 10, even though we only have open 9 buildings. And again, ones that are now in their visioning process stage, which is what our director of 21st Century Learning calls it, when the school is doing a lot of self-reflection and determining what actual, particular academic focus they'd like to select. So those are not, some of them actually have been confirmed. We just got that report this morning, but not in time for this slide. So we were hoping that someone from engagement was going to be able to come back from the schools this morning to present their slides, but since they did not make it, I'll go ahead and run through these for them. Their Beyond Meeting slide is talking about other issues around schools that they are trying to have impact on, or at least gather information about. So drop-off and pick-up best practices is always an ongoing issue with schools. So looking at traffic congestion during those peak times, and helping schools moving into newly renovated and rebuilt buildings often have more students. It increases the vehicular traffic and also the pedestrian traffic around the schools. So they're trying to document best practices that our open schools have developed so that we can learn from those and pass them on to the new schools as well. And then restorative practices, they are taking into the schools, doing the restorative practice circles and working with principals and staff. And they have been, that has been an ongoing part of engagement recently as well.
Okay, I have a question.
Yep.
Because I looked at this before I got here.
Yes.
This drop-off and pick-up best practice is critical, and I was wondering if you had engaged the community and the people in the neighborhood, had a community meeting, because that could blow up for us if the community is not on board knowing all the information that we already know, because if it's going to be congestion with traffic and drop-offs, and we're in neighborhoods.
Absolutely, and this is just to suggest that we're trying to learn lessons learned, to pull out those lessons learned from schools that have already opened. But during the period of time that we go through the design period and we have the meetings, still continue the meetings with the community, that is often a topic of conversation. With Walter P. Carter, for example, we went back out and did an additional traffic study for that school. I believe, as I recall, we did a traffic study for Calvin Rodwell. We've gone and done additional work to try to understand better the impact that it will have, and a lot of times it's just how to deal with what they've already been experiencing, even if the numbers aren't going to necessarily increase dramatically, so that we can make it better for the community. And we're really doing a deep dive now and looking at the signage packages that we're putting at the schools and trying to make sure that they really do move traffic in an efficient manner and as safely as possible. We have a lot of challenging locations for our schools, Govans, for example, just being able to make sure that pedestrian traffic and vehicular traffic don't cross in ways that are unsafe. So we really do engage the communities around this and try to respond to their concerns about parking and so forth. But yes.
Yeah, excuse me, I have an example of Calvin Rodwell
Yes,
Elementary Middle School, which we're rebuilding.
correct.
And we have the new, I still say the new Super Fresh or Super.
Right across the street.
Right
Yes.
across the street.
Uh-huh.
Then you have the school right there, and then you have a lot of traffic.
Yes.
Going up and down Liberty Heights, and then you have a lot of traffic going up and down Hillsdale.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, because I was wondering, you've had community meetings right there, because it would seem with that increase, it might be an issue if you haven't addressed it, but you said that you've addressed those issues already.
So they did do a traffic study, and it should have informed or impacted the way in which they do drop-off and pickup at the school. We look very carefully at the number of buses that are anticipated, how we can fully move them out of the traffic pattern so that it doesn't cause a bottleneck or a tie-up in front of the school at those times. And in any way that we can increase parking on the site. So off the top of my head, I can't honestly tell you the details of Calvin Rodwell, but I certainly could get you more information about that school in particular,
Right,
if that
because
would be helpful.
you got Grove Park coming from, Grove Park will be joining
Yes.
the school and when it opens, so it's
Mhm.
going to be really interesting to see how that goes.
So let me pull some information, some details, and provide those to you, so that you can see what we had in mind and what steps have been taken to try to alleviate some of the congestion that we know will happen. But it's a good flag, because we know that that's a busy thoroughfare right there.
Okay, thank you.
Just for my own understanding around, perhaps you can answer this, John, our new chief, High Cupboard, will she then, her team be participating in many of these discussions around like convening communities around these kind of traffic issues and things of that nature? I just am trying to get a sense of if there's a way to collaborate with a different department here to kind of extend our presence in community.
Has family and community engagement been a part of some of these conversations?
Not formally, no, they have not.
But I think it's a good suggestion to bring to her to see what role her or her staff can play in that. It's
Okay.
just better coordination, so I think it's a wonderful idea.
Thank you for the suggestion. We'll definitely move forward with that. Desserts and discussions has been a really interesting way that engagement devised to go into the schools. They bring a little food along. It's always tempting to get staff to come and visit and stay in a school for the day, and actually just have staff visit when they have the opportunity to talk about their impressions of the school, how it's gone for them, what they like about it, what they don't like about it. Does the furniture work? Do the adjacencies work? Has the school made teaching easier for them? How have they found the new VIT packages? So it's interesting. The comments come from on all different topics, and so engagement is in the process of compiling the information they receive now, and they're going to share it with the city schools team and also with MSA, in hopes that it will help to inform some of our choices in the schools that we're still under construction. And And then the last one, so these were some updates, and of course, first and foremost, BCRP, those documents for the overarching MOU, the changes were finally all, I think, accounted for and agreed to. Those documents are in the process of being signed now by the head of BCRP and also by Dr. Santelises. So we removed schools that were no longer applicable, that did not lose recreation centers during the 21st century process. But we did add Walter P. Carter, which was one that is losing their freestanding structure. We have clarified different things about the rooms containing valuables and equipment, instruments that are not easily stored would be exempt from the BCRP areas that they have access to. But on the other hand, all of the big box spaces, certain technology areas and certain areas that have other types of useful equipment that is available to them will be open, and that's all detailed at the individual school level in those agreements, but at least the overarching MOU has now been agreed to. So that was a great goal for us to reach this year. And then also in terms of clarifying the repair obligations. I mean, there's just things that you work out that you don't think about when you're not occupying the same space. So it took a little bit longer to work out that language. Conflict resolution, if there should be one that comes up, and then clarifying that the department will not issue permits for scheduled use space the way that they could do at their discretion in their own recreation centers. And then last but not least, just speaking to our new executive director who started yesterday. So we've really tried to get her feet wet right from the start. And you'll be seeing her at all of your functions from now on. So again, I just want to say that it has been a complete pleasure working with this board and a real education. So I thank you very much for helping me in this past year. So thank you.
We thank you for all of the work that you did for us, and we really look forward to working with you, Dorothy.
Yes.
Thank you.
She's not leaving quite yet. She's going to be here for a few more weeks.
I also want to repeat what I said at the beginning. I want to welcome you back to Baltimore, but I want to ask you if you could do us a favor, and because this is public, could you share with us a short bio of you and who you are, because you did say you're returning back to Baltimore. Give us a little overview of who you are.
I'm a very complex person, but a good thing is I value education first and foremost, because I'm the first in my family to actually graduate high school in a sense, obtain a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. So I understand the community. I've worked my way through organizations, including some educational entertainment. For here in Baltimore, I was the director of design and construction for 7 years, Sinai Hospital, LifeBridge Health. I understand education to the point where when my daughter was having challenges and difficulties in trying to find her way, that I actually gave up my job to actually move to California to ensure that she would get the applicable education that she needed. When that part of my life, that routine was ended, she's now at NYU, that created the opportunity for me to return back to Baltimore. I'm very happy during my time in California that I was also able to work with the second largest school district in the United States. It is universal in the fact that education is very challenging in America. It's also very challenging in inner cities, and it's very conspicuous in the fact that some districts and our schools are not being taken care of as much as they should. and that it does impact the lives of our children. If anything I can do with regards to my background, my experience, the challenges that I've had to overcome, if I'm able to bring these experiences to Baltimore City, which is what I intend to do, to improve the lives of our kids, to ensure that they have the opportunity to have choice-filled lives, which means that they can be in Baltimore if they choose to. They can relocate to another state if they choose to. They can relocate to another country, but then still have all the fundamentals of education that will take them around this world, then it means that I would have done my job. My job is not necessarily to build buildings. We can all build buildings. But my job is to also ensure and to work in partnerships with the educational institutions to support providing a better environment for our kids to learn. So it's good to be here.
Thank you very much. And we welcome you. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you so
And I
very
hope
much.
you
I look
enjoy
forward to
being
working with
here.
you too.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Spent some time in Annapolis this week, and quite experienced.
Good morning, Commissioners, Board Executive, Chief of Schools. Our mission, and I'm not going to read, point by point, but our mission is to make sure that our kids feel safe, our staff is safe in schools every day, and we're there to provide support for that. And so, that is our mission essentially. What our goal is to create quality connected relationships with young people in schools so that they feel safe and that they feel comfortable letting us know when we feel like there may be some harm that may come to schools. I think we've been successful in that. I can tell you from the last 3 years that I've been in charge that we have recovered over 20 guns. And in those situations where we've recovered firearms, there's been little or no force used in these situations. And a lot of that goes toward the new policy that we've created, along with our stakeholders, and along with the training that we've received on restorative practices, history of Baltimore, implicit bias, building relationships with kids, crisis prevention, intervention, and all those things has helped us to decrease, as you can see, the arrests. I can tell you, this scale is just going back to 2009, and I can tell you, I've been here almost 20 years, and when I came on this job, we were arresting well over 1,000 students a year. And now, as you can see, that's as of last week. We arrested 36 kids, and we have about two and a half months to go. And so what we've started to do is divert a lot of these low-level offenses, things that the principals and the administration should be dealing with, that the police really shouldn't be involved with, because they weren't involved in this stuff when I was in school. They're dealing with a lot of this stuff, and we're being more restorative in how we deal with our young people. As you can see in the breakdown, these are the things that we've arrested students for, and I can tell you that the aggravated assault, if the public's not aware, that's a felony, and that's when some serious bodily harm is done to somebody. Of course, handgun violations. A lot of these common assaults may have occurred in the presence of the officer, or that it may be a domestic violence situation where we may have made an arrest based on the law, or assaults on police. Of course, robberies. We're going to arrest people when they rob people in the schools, and especially if they rob people with a weapon. And so those are things that we've arrested students for in terms of school-based arrests. But it's been a significant decrease in that. Now, also in terms of use of force, and folks may not know what use of force is. It's a separation from use of force and excessive force. In terms of use of force, that is when one of my police officers may use pepper spray, they may use a baton, or they may have to use physical force. And that would be a use of force situation. But as you can see on the chart, there's even been a significant decrease in that. And I accredit that to the fact that we've developed a MOU with the principals that we won't get involved in discipline. And so where before we may have been getting called for kids in the class that may have been disruptive or kids in the hallway, we're no longer getting involved in that. And there's a clear understanding between the principals and my police officers that we're not going to get involved in that. We're not going to tell kids to take their hats off and get out the hallway and pull their pants up and all that kind of stuff. We're just not going to do that. And so it's been a decrease in that. There's also been an increase in our community outreach efforts. Some of you have been to National Night Out, where we have probably about 1,000 students that come to that every summer right before school starts in downtown Locker Room. Mission Barbecue and some other organizations sponsor this event where we give kids back to school supplies and all that kind of stuff. We're trying to do at least one community outreach effort every month, along with about 5 summer camps that we participate in every summer. 2 of them, we're the folks that run it, and that one is the Great Camp. That's the Gang Resistance Education and Training. We partnered with ATF on that, and we had that camp last year at Francis Scott Key. This year it's going to be at Cherry Hill Elementary Middle, and also we have a school police camp that was at Medfield that will be at Stadium School this year. And we also work with the police department with some of the camps that they do as well. So we also have a camp called GEMS. That's Girls Expecting More Success. One of our officers runs that camp. That's at Vanguard and Love You to Life. And we're doing officer friendly with the police department. We've increased our safety patrol program. When I took over, we may have had 80 kids in the camp. We have about 950 right now, and we're still increasing. I like to see it in every elementary, middle school. I'm just getting feedback from principals where we have this program. It's significantly increased the climate because students are involved in positive behavior and trying to influence other students to be involved in that. So we're doing ongoing training consistently on our professional development days and also in the summer. Restorative practices, mindfulness, youth mental health first aid. I'm not going to read every single bullet, but I will tell you that I was told by Ed Clark, who is the executive director of Maryland Center for School Safety under MSDE, that we were the most trained police force that dealt with children in the state of Maryland. And so I'm not bragging or boasting. I'm just telling you that's factual, what I'm telling you. And we hold several restorative circles here at North Avenue in our office and in the re-engagement center almost every day. So on next steps, we're going to continue the implementation of our newly approved policy, which is more progressive than any school police department or any police department that's in any school system. When you talk about us having youth-specific policy on use of force and how we deal with young people, that is not something that you're going to hear. And I talked to my colleagues in the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, Maryland Chiefs of Police Association, International Chiefs of Police Association. The policies that we have are more progressive than any police department in the country. And that's something that you won't hear. And we will still continue to work on the school police report card, which will be disseminated next month. And as you all know, most of the students, 25,000 students took this survey that Youth as Resources and Algebra Project developed. And out of 25,000 students in the 35 or 36 schools that we had our officers permanently assigned, most of the students that took this survey felt like we were respectful and we didn't treat them like criminals. And that we contributed to the positive culture and climate in our schools. I'm not saying we're perfect. I'm always looking for how we can improve and looking at ways that we can improve. But I will tell you that I'm not seeing what we're doing around this country. I was in Detroit. The Open Society Institute flew me to Detroit back in November to talk to educators, school police departments, because even though we're the only school police department in Maryland, you know, LA has a school police force, Atlanta, Miami, Philadelphia. All these cities have school police forces. And those chiefs were in the room when I talked to them about the things that we're doing. And I feel comfortable telling you that Baltimore is the most progressive school police department in this country. That's all I have.
Well, I had all my questions answered, and we spoke at Indianapolis, and I appreciate what you're doing. I would like to encourage you to continue doing it, and continue doing all the things that you're doing with all the schools, the principals, and educators, and leadership, and ask for help. And I think you've explained to the legislatures and everybody exactly what we're doing here at Baltimore City Public Schools. So if anyone has any questions, they must feel free to contact us and contact you, Chief, and ask questions direct or any other questions to some of our leaders here.
Thank you, commissioners, board exec, chief of schools. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Joe Vogel, the Interim Director of Procurement. There are 14 items on here. Would you like me to go through each one, summarize real quick, or do you have questions?
I think that you should go through it. We've all read it, but we have viewers from the public.
Yep.
To let them know that it's there. If you can just list it.
Yep.
And
Okay.
if anyone has any questions, they can feel free to
Okay.
contact us. And if we have our commissioner here have any questions, we will ask
Okay,
the
I will do.
questions. Okay,
Yes.
thanks a lot.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, the first item is requesting board's approval to piggyback a competitive solicited contract that Frederick County Public Schools did to award to U.S. Foods to provide and deliver frozen and refrigerated food products, USDA commodities, dry canned goods for city schools. The estimated annual contract amount is $10 million. The term of the contract is June 1 of 2019 through January 23rd of 2021, with 3 two-year annual renewals.
I have a question when I was reviewing this. I didn't know the difference between when you list items, what's the difference in, excuse me, problems with computers today. I don't think you have to plug it up. I didn't understand. I didn't understand the difference between you haven't even gotten to it, the catering.
Yes, well, I have not gotten, that's next.
Yeah, that's next.
Want to do that next?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's one of the questions I saw where you the first part. Sorry, my computer was acting crazy, so I couldn't read it too well. Questions about food and nutrition for the cafeteria, that's one thing. And the funding for that. What do you do with, what does catering mean?
This
What's
is
the
for
difference between the two?
Right. This is for when schools and/or departments are looking to have food brought in for professional development. Sometimes the schools do back-to-school nights. They bring parents in. So they're bringing in deli sandwiches. They're bringing in pizza. They're not going through our cafeterias. So we're actually going to actual catering vendors out there.
And that's a 3-year period?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I didn't know who was getting the catering, and I've kind of figured it out, but I think we need to say who's,
Okay.
verbalize it. Thank you.
Great. Okay.
The next one we're about to go to with the catering, I always get confused. So it's easier when contracts start during our fiscal year. It's just cleaner. So, but what happens? We're about to look at one that the contract starts in May, and it ends in May. So what would we then, as a board, prepare in the budget?
Right. You would be approving as a board. You'd be approving the contract term.
Right.
And then the amount, and then what the product or service is. Then each fiscal year, then we only pay for that service with that fiscal year funds. So even though a contract may start in May, so anything that we use from May through June 30th would be out of that fiscal year. The contract is still running, and then when July 1 comes, the funds are then used for that fiscal year.
Okay. Thank you.
It makes it a little easier than having hundreds of contracts come up on July 1. This way we can kind of look at them and not just rubber stamp them, all of them coming up in July 1. Okay. All right, the next is a request for the board to approve a competitively solicited contract with ENA Services to provide a fully managed IRU wide area network and associated dark fiber services. We are seeking E-rate reimbursement through USAC. We expect that approval to come in on or about January 1 of 2020. The contract initial term is 10 years with 2 5-year renewals. The total amount of the contract for the 20 years is $36,157,985. With E-rate funding, city schools cost will be $3,615,798.
I just want to mention, I think it would be a good idea, and I didn't mention it the last time because this is similar to the presentation that was done the last board meeting by technology, and it was an excellent job. If it's at all possible, and I hate to add to our board meetings in the evening, it's so much, but I think it would be great if at some point we can do like a 5-minute presentation of the technology that's going on, because I thought it was an excellent job.
Okay.
And I think this is a continuation of the new technology that we're doing. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm
Would you like-
wondering, huh? We didn't. I talked about it, but I don't think, they didn't do a presentation. I mean, a short one, not the long one that you gave.
Okay.
Remember
Do
the
you
last board
want
meeting?
one to around this, the wide area network?
Well, this is
or-
different than the one before.
Yes, it is. Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
It's quite a bit of funds. And, okay, sometimes I feel a little bit uncomfortable spending 2 minutes on that amount of funds without understanding more about it. And you don't have to do it a lot here, but I think that we really need to do a short presentation to the complete board so the board can see the work that you are doing. We're talking about 36 million Is that what I'm looking at?
It would be 3.6 for us. Can you explain what the E-rate is and
Sure.
what this particular service is?
Sure. Yeah, so again, yearly we spend about $2.8 million for our internet services where schools can connect to do anything related to accessing technology, whether it's assessment, whether the schools connecting to our payroll systems, a whole lot of stuff, right? Even all the 21st century schools, which are pushing out a lot of technology, they need to connect to the centralized, internet and everything to do the day-to-day activity, right? So with the E-rate funding, if you get the approval for that, instead of paying $2.8 million, you're going to pay about, I think, $300,000 or $120,000 in a year. So that's a significant savings, right? So that's the core. And E-rate is a federal government FCC approved program to make sure schools get the connectivity they need.
And I understand everything you're saying. I'm just saying that you're doing an excellent job from what I see and what I've read. However, when we talk about large sums of money and to make sure everybody understands what we're doing, so we don't, I'm one of those people that I don't like to come back and guess at what is occurring. I like to be clear in my head, and we're talking about X amount of funds, and I think that we have other board members who do not hear what goes on in operation unless they're looking and viewing. And I think it's a great idea to do a short presentation so people, the layman, can understand exactly what's going on. There won't be any questions asked. And the public, we have people who are viewing what we're talking about here, and we're going through finance real quick, and and people might say, what is all of this money going to?
Right.
And I think you do an excellent job presenting, and I think that we should include that on our presentation. If anything, this is the largest amount that I've been involved in to see, and I feel comfortable before I raise my hand and say yes.
Sure.
I just like for people to see what we're saying.
Sure.
Yes, too.
Yep. We'll definitely line it up. And as you recollect, I think you're referring to the technology update we did to the Ops Committee, I think in Jan. I think we were talking about all the initiatives we are doing. Definitely we will line up a short presentation for the board.
And I think
Yeah.
it would be a 5-minute presentation. Would that be 5 minutes?
Yeah, let me take that back and figure out what we should do.
Okay.
Because I feel like there's a lot of aspects to this, and you get a little bit into it, and then you get a long way. So let's talk about this offline about what we should
Right,
present,
it
because I
doesn't
get
have to
exactly
be
what you're saying.
lengthy. It could be short and precise, and board members can see exactly what's going on, because coming to the board for them to vote on it, they need to be clear
Yep.
about what they're voting on.
I'm thinking we could the operations presentation, just a shortened version of that.
That's right.
I don't think we'll be able to queue it up prior to Tuesday before this, but we could get it in a future.
Voting on it Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay, then we need to spend some time presenting it. I mean, it's already, the board's agenda has already been created.
So maybe can we pull it for any questions that board members would have about this particular? So we'll pull it from,
Yeah, we could that's a good idea. We could just pull it during the consent agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what
And
we'll
then-
do.
Yep.
We'll
So-
pull it, and
Commissioners, we have a deadline with the FCC on next Wednesday to file this application. So
to apply for the E-rate.
Correct.
Applicant, well,
Correct.
we need to do
Yeah.
that. And that's what we're voting on Tuesday?
that is right. And,
To apply for that grant?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think we'll just pull it and do not a
Yep.
presentation, but just an explanation
Yep.
at the board meeting, and then we can queue up a shorter version of the previous operations presentation for a future board meeting.
because, the beauty of this board that I see is that we come to the table with all kinds of experiences. And we know that we have a person on the board who's a finance person, and that person is not here right now. And it's a possibility that that person might have a question, because we throw in all kinds of questions, and it could be just answered by, when
Sure.
we pull it, you can summarize and give us a short
Sure.
explanation
And,
of.
and also
what's
just for
going
the clarity, Commissioner, this is one of the board item which actually was approved last January or 2018. But again, when we filed to the FCC, they basically, denied because saying that there was some cardinal change which we have done, like we basically clarified the architecture, what it should be. They considered that as a cardinal change or a major change, and they wanted us to go back and rebid it, right?
Right.
And that is the reason why we have to, go back and rebid it, and we did that, and that's the reason why we're kind of working
But you know
through
what,
this.
there's never anything wrong with re-explaining.
Absolutely.
Because the
Absolutely.
one thing that people in the public ask the question, are we evaluating what we're doing?
Sure.
And this is a good sign that yes, we are. And I think that's critical because guess what? When it comes down to the nitty gritty and it's not clear, who do they blame? The board.
Right.
And it's clear that I'm always saying, I think you're doing a wonderful job. I just think that because there's only a few of us at the table and we're talking about X amount of funds, there's nothing wrong with taking a brief moment and reviewing it again.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
We'll be prepared for that.
Okay, the next item is requesting board's approval to participate in the Maryland Education Enterprise Consortium, or MEEC. It's a competitive solicited contract, a requirements contract for audiovisual services and equipment. Estimated annual amount of the contract is $700,000. Contract period is March 27 of 2019 through January 27 of 2020, with 4 one-year renewal options. And the award is made to approximately 10 different vendors. Okay. Didn't want to interrupt if you had any questions. The next item is requesting board's approval of a competitively solicited contract with Sabra Associates. The total amount of the contract, on your sheets, it says $698,000. The correct amount is $348,816. It's to procure a bell schedule and a bus transportation consultant services for city schools. The contract will run from March 27 of 2019 through March 26th of 2022 with one-year renewal option. Okay. The next item is requesting board's approval of a competitively bid contract with 2 vendors, Charm City Fire Protection and Multi-Corp Fire Protection Services. Total amount of the contract is $600,000. The contract provides kitchen hood and fire extinguisher maintenance and inspection services. The contract term is March 27 of 2019 through March 26 of 2022 with 1 2-year renewal option. The next item is requesting the board's approval to increase a contract with Towson Mechanical by an additional $480,000 to complete the construction of HVAC system at the northern building. The additional funds is required for adding 10 more additional units in the Success Academy portion of the building. The next item is requesting board's approval of a competitively bid requirements contract with Modular Genius, Inc. to provide modular classrooms and installation services as needed. Contract term is March 27 of 2019 through March 26th of 2022 with 1 2-year renewal option. Estimated cost for one of these is approximately $100,000 to $500,000, depending on the size and the site work. Next item, request the board's approval to piggyback a competitively solicited contract by Sourcewell with AstroTurf Corporation. They provide athletic surfacing with related materials, supplies, and installation services. Estimated annual amount is $150,000. Contract term is March 27 of 2019 through March 26th of 2022 with 1 2-year renewal option. Next item, request the board's approval of a competitively solicited contract with Towson Mechanical. in the total amount of $1,049,400. Provides HVAC installation and replacement at Hazelwood Elementary and Middle School. Next item, request the board's approval of a competitively bid contract, again with Towson Mechanical, in the amount of $2,392,500 for installation of HVAC systems at Hilltop Elementary and Matthew A. Henson Elementary School. The next item, requests the board's approval of a competitively bid contract with Autumn Contracting, total amount of $10,321,000. It's for roof replacement construction services at both Polytechnic Institute and Western High Schools. Next item, request the board's approval to increase the existing contract with Hogan and Lovells by an additional $500,000, also to extend the term through June 30th of 2020. This is to provide legal services related to charter school funding litigation. And then last but not least, the last item, request the board's approval to piggyback a national IPA competitively bid requirements contract with BSN Sports and U.S. Games. The contract provides physical education and recreational products, team uniforms, field equipment, and supplies. The discounts range anywhere from 8 to 30%. Estimated annual contract value is $450,000, and the term is April 1 of 2019 through September 30th of 2019 with 2 one-year renewal options.
Thank you. This is very good.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, no questions right now. And that will end our meeting today, and our next meeting will be in this room on May 21st, which is a distance away. So thank you very much, and have a great day. Thank you.